Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're looking at an 80s era locomotive. It's the GE C36-7 from Rapido Trains with ESU LokSound, their Mopower power pack, which is a capacitor that helps retain power on dirty track or loss of power. And it is a DC and DCC dual locomotive, so you can run it in either DC or DCC with sound, of course, from ESU LokSound, as I mentioned. Let's get started on this review right now.
Many of the products you see in this video are available at trainworld.com. Since 1968, this family-owned business has been serving the needs of the modeling community with 2 New York brick-and-mortar store locations in Brooklyn and Long Island, plus their vast array of online items. Shop 24/7 at trainworld.com.
I'm going to unbox the NS version. Trying to recover from my UP bias here. As you can see, there is a manual, 23 pages, English only, since this ran mostly just in the US. But as you can see, they have prototype photos. They talk about functions, configuration variables, etc. Exploded parts diagram. There's actually 2 of these here. As you can see, hundreds of parts. That's the V2, this is the V1. Exploded parts diagrams. And then in typical Rapido fashion, you have some Rapido stickers, including one just made for this locomotive, the C36-7. So that's pretty cool. And then you have the locomotive itself. Let's see what's in this little goodie bag here. Looks like you have cab window sunshades and a couple extra steps in case those fall off in transit. It's a little etched metal or etched plastic, depending on the type of step, do come off fairly easily, so probably saves their parts department a little time by putting extras in there. So, I believe that's what it is, but it's early in the morning, I could be wrong. So we have the locomotive out of its box. Let's get all of the foam out and then I'll show you the details. Alright, here's the C36-7's up close and personal. The Mopack is out of its container, out of its box now too, but as promised, we will start with the NS version. And being Rapido, there are differences. They do not copy and paste the changes on all road numbers and road names. But on the NS version, you'll notice they do have ditch lights. There is a MU hose plugged in. There's MU receptacles also right above the hose. Accessory hoses and brake line hose with silver tipped ends coming through a snowplow with both handrails and a window for the receptacles. I'm going to go even further in here so you can see that even better. And there's also metal couplers. Etched metal windshield wipers have a nice fine detail appearance to them. There's a sand filler hatch just slightly peeking up on the nose there, along with grab irons on the nose as well. On the side you have cab interior detail, including control stand. There are firecracker antennas up top, speed recorder, and some other detail on the brakes. On the side you can see this big intake housing here. That's prominent on the C36-7s. You have the fuel tank detail, including sight glass, emergency shutoff. All the compartment cabinet detail along the sides molded in nicely, but it does contrast nicely also. Horn, exhaust, and radiator fan grill section on the rear. Jacking pad details also present, as you can see there. On the rear of the locomotive, we've got number boards. These should light up. Again, rear ditch lights, MU receptacle, MU hose, accessory hoses, silver tipped end, etc. that we already mentioned. I also did not mention the coupler cut bar, which is present. You can see those loops on each side for easy access for the crews to decouple the consist or whatever they're working on. And as you can see here, sanding line detail also on the truck, and more of the same up on the other side. You can see the battery box doors, more of that truck detail there, including the chain, truck chain there. It is an actual real chain. It's not molded plastic. As we look towards the top, you get a good view, top-down view of the locomotive as well, including some grill, see-through grill detail on the back, and a really nice depth on that exhaust stack. And that kind of wraps up our look at the NS version. Got cab window sunshades, wind deflectors, etc. There's cab windows that are fixed in place. They don't move, but they have a nice detail. Last but not least is the Mopac, Missouri Pacific, with a Union Pacific shield there on the front. As you can see, it's also on the tip of the nose. A lot more contrast to those grab irons on the nose and the sand filler hatch. You can see those a lot better on this Missouri Pacific version. There's also the absence of ditch lights. That's because the NS had ditch lights and the Mopac does not. There are some other differences on the configuration of the roof, the horn location, etc. But we'll just go and do a quick 360 on this. You can see the coupler cut lever a little better. See, the horn placement is there versus in the center on the NS. You can see those little ridges under this exhaust, or intake housing I should say. That's a nice detail that could have been easily overlooked if they wanted to save some money on tooling costs. You can see on the brake wheel, there's nice, or on the brakes, there's a nice detail as well. And the wheels, trucks, etc. It's early morning, a little tired here. And more up on the other side here. It looks like they might put spare coupler knuckles on the trucks in this case. Here's a closer view of the truck. That's what it looks like to me. It could be wrong, but you got your speed recorder, brake, or truck chain, and then I believe that's a spare coupler knuckle. You also have rotating bearing caps. And here's your brake wheel that I kept trying to call the brakes earlier, or the trucks earlier. So that's what you get for getting up and then 5 minutes later starting in on videos. So this is a quick 360 of the Mopac. Alright, you probably wonder what these weigh. 535 grams, 1 pound, 2.9 ounces. That is almost 1 1/4 pound there. So pretty hefty locomotive. It's a total of 18.9 ounces. Now, will the NS be slightly different because of ditch lights? Maybe. Actually, it's lighter, so has a little bit of a variation there that makes it 0.1 ounces lighter. But anyway, those are your weights, so you have a good idea. Let's move on. Alright, I've got the NS locomotive on the track. We're going to start that up. But a lot of people asked me to add air into these reviews, and these locomotives first appeared in early 1981 when GE built their first domestic order of C36-7s, which was only 6 for the Norfolk and Western. And then later, these other variations appeared, like I showed you on the box. The NS and Mopac versions were more towards the mid-80s, 84 for the NS, and 85 for the Mopac. Now you may be asking yourself, don't these look like C30-7s? But the fact is the C36-7s seen here are actually identical in appearance to the C30-7s. The real difference is 750 horsepower. The C30-7s had 3,000 horsepower. The C36-7 has 3,600 horsepower or 3,750 horsepower compared to those C30-7s. Alright, enough yap. Let's start this up. F8 on your ESU decoder is what will start the locomotive up. Not an overbearing prime mover, which is good. So let's listen to some sounds. F0 obviously is the headlight. Let's do bell real quick. And horn. ESU decoder is really responsive, so when I do that short horn, that's not on its own function, so it sounds pretty good to be able to just hit that real quickly and create that short horn for the grade crossing. F3's coupler clank. F4 is dynamic brake if equipped, which we'll get into in motion. F5's flange wheel, also we'll get into it in motion. F6 ditch lights. Here's F6 for the ditch lights. I've got an NCE ProCab problem where my wireless does not want to control ditch lights for some reason. I think I need to reset it. F7 is dim the headlights. It also takes out the ditch lights and turns those off. There's a nice fade effect to that. 8 startup and shutdown as we covered. 9 is drive hold. 10 is independent brake. 11 is class lights, which I don't believe these have. And 12 is switching mode. 18 is step lights. That's a new difference. Possibly first time in HO out of the factory. We'll look at that in the dark. 19 number boards. 20 air compressor. 21 Sarco spitters. Hear that spitting valve there. 22 cab door. 26 manual notching up. 27 manual notching down. We'll do that real quick so you can hear prime mover range. Right now we're back to normal. It seems like I had to hit F28 to really get it out of that higher prime mover notching. So not sure about F26 and F27 or if it's another NCE Pro Cab issue that I need to switch out to a different cab on. Alright, lighting in the dark. You can see the ditch lights, headlight, number boards, all realistic, prototypical appearance. I'll just shine a little bit of light so you can see where we're at on the locomotive here. You also see a reflection in the cab. So let's change angles and show you some other functions of this locomotive and lighting. If you look closely, you can see in the cab control stand gauges are lit. Rapido's been doing this a lot lately. But something I have not yet seen in HO scale, and correct me if I'm wrong, is lit step lights. That bottom step, again, a little bit of light for reference here, is lit. And that's front and rear, both sides. As I pan this way, you can see the rear. But both front and rear, both sides, step lights are lit. And I believe that is a first in HO scale, from the factory at least. Directional lighting includes ditch lights. I'll show you that real quick. And when you switch off, they kind of fade out. Obviously you also have your lit number boards back here as well. Really nicely executed yellowish appearance, no shine through, just very prototypical looking. Switch out and look at the Mo Pack, or Missouri Pacific as I should say, not to be confused with Mo Power. Mo Power is the capacitor inside the locomotive. Those horns and the bell and everything, they sound excellent. But we're going to move this locomotive here. This one does have classification lights. And we're going to set the AccuTrack 2 speedometer up and capture its slow speed control at 1 scale mile an hour. Or 1 out of 128 speed steps, I should say. So we'll just pivot here to the right. You can see it is entering. This is set to 187 scale miles per hour, even though the indicator light is down there by kilometers per hour. Got good clearance on both sides here. So we're just waiting on it to crawl its way through. I can already tell it's going to be under 1 scale mile per hour here. And it's about to reach the other sensor, and we have 0.7 scale miles per hour. I'll lift that off. I want you guys to see it's at 1 out of 128 speed steps. How smooth that's moving along. That's not even with brake-in or anything. I see very little, non-existent really, lurch. So really nice on the slow speed control. That really adds to realism, especially when you're coming to stops or working in yards, etc. Here's your class lights on the Missouri Pacific version. They're white or red, but you can see they're lit there. It's about the only change between the locomotives. Alright, we're about to do pull test on this. About 3.3 it's capping out at. It's about 50 cars, 50 freight cars per locomotive. So a couple of these can handle a 100 car consist. And I've noticed that this pull test is even a little shy. My estimates are a little shy of real life, but that is what you have there. So probably over 50 cars per locomotive. Last but not least, kind of a Mo Pack or Mo Power. See, I'm even getting it confused. capacitor test. So we'll lift this off the track and I'll just count the seconds. So about 4 seconds of uninterrupted power, and I don't even know if the capacitor charged up as much, because the NS version was about 5 to 6 seconds. So you have that capacitor built in for interrupted dirty track, or like I said, wiring issues or whatever. All right, let's recap this review. Well, that's going to wrap up our look of the Missouri Pacific and NS C36-7s from Rapido. These locomotives have road name, number specific detail. I don't know if they've gotten into really road numbers, but differences, but definitely road name detail here that we can prove with horn placement, antenna configurations, ditch lights, etc. But with that said, I think it's a pretty solid locomotive. Really nothing to complain about, nothing to really mark it down for. And I believe that the step lights added will kind of push the industry forward in more lighting features, which is nice. So I think that's the first time I've seen it. Like I said, if I'm wrong, then you guys can mention that in the comments, or anything else you want in the comments. But we're going to leave you with a run by, and we'll see you next time right here on the channel. Take care.